Welcome to Around the Girdle Earth, podcast where Dartmouth stories come to life. I'm your host, Yovany Jerez, class of '03, and in each episode, we sit down with members of the Dartmouth alumni community to explore the moments, the mentors, the memories that shaped them from the green to the great unknown. So, whether you graduated last year or decades ago, these conversations offer a window into the journeys that we have taken and the common threads that connect us all. So grab your favorite drink, step into this story, open your mind, and let's wander together. Today, our very special guest is Ivan Padilla, a Tucky class of 2012. Ivan, welcome to our podcast. How are you?
Yovany, great to be with you. Really excited about this discussion, to be able to kind of just go back in time a bit, and just share my experiences, not only from Tuck and on, but even before that. So really looking
Yeah,
forward.
you have a beautiful journey, and we look forward to learning more. But why don't you kick us off by giving us a little bit of background? Like, what's the cultural background? Where's your family? Where you came from? Where you grew up? Let's start there.
Absolutely. So, I am yo soy Boricua, Puerto Rican, as we like to say, that pura cepa, even
Pura
though,
cepa.
pura cepa, yeah. Even though, I was born here in the States, we have very, very intimate ties, right? I mean, I spoke Spanish before I knew how to do anything else, right? So I was born and raised in a very Puerto Rican home. I consider myself fully Puerto Rican and fully American, right? I'm from Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is Connecticut is in the Northeast and tri-state area, a real big hub for Latinos, big Puerto Rican communities, as you know, by the huge Puerto Rican Day Parade and other cultures that are there, Cuban, Dominican, etc. So yeah, that's where I'm from originally.
What was the core of your family?
Yeah, where they're still located in Connecticut. So I'm still, a Bridgeport native. I still consider myself from Bridgeport. That's where I go back home to for the holidays. I still have siblings there, spread out throughout Connecticut as well as, the Northeast. But yeah, that's home for me,
How many
Uh,
siblings you have, Ivan?
I have two sisters, some nieces and stuff, and I myself have a couple of kids with a beautiful wife who's Cuban and Peruvian, so very, very eclectic and crazy mix there. But yeah, so my roots, Connecticut. I came up as a helicopter design engineer under the United Technologies umbrella, specifically working for Sikorsky. That conglomerate was broken up, split between Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. But yeah, my roots are very much interconnected with aerospace and defense. I still am within that industry and serve that industry. And over the past 10 years, I've been trying to figure out my way in through sales post Tuck.
Yeah, I
So yeah,
saw that
it's a
on your
crazy journey.
LinkedIn. I
Yeah,
saw that on your LinkedIn. You have a strong technical background, and then you went into sales. And I
yeah,
want to get to that more. But before we get there,
yeah,
so here you are in Connecticut, and
yeah.
you're going to high school, and like who's pushing or who is championing the concept of higher education in your family?
Absolutely. So Bridgeport, if you know, it's one of those cities that, uh, you know, crime ridden, right? It's just, unfortunately, there's this big paradox between Bridgeport being one of the richest counties, Fairfield counties, but then also having this pocket of, just typical urban America. So with that being said, I grew up in a first generation home, both from the States, but also college bound. How that happened was, Jose Padilla, Jose Julio Padilla, pretty stereotypical Puerto Rican name, but that's my dad. And I think he saw very early on that, the American dream, as much as he worked at times 3 jobs, right, to make ends meet. and was an amazing provider. But he realized that that American dream was always kind of like just beyond his reach. And he knew that for his kids, he wanted better. So he was the one that really championed education, and it was not even an option, right? I was going to go to college. That was, I don't know where, I don't know how, I didn't know what it even meant, but I knew that I had to go to college. He instilled that in us very early on, not only me, but also my sisters, who also have gone on to have careers and have gone to college as well as advanced degrees, securing advanced degrees.
So who sort of coach you to, like, hey, here are the colleges you need to look to, and here's the college you need to visit? Because you landed at Tufts University, which is a beautiful, gorgeous campus in Boston. I visited Tufts, so I'm curious about what was your selection process and how did you arrive to Tufts?
When you don't have that network of folks that have come before, and you're kind of you're kind of the first, it's very hard because you don't know the questions to ask, you don't know what to do, you don't know who to, so I always had my eyes open, for I was always aware of folks that I can tap into for knowledge or questions about college or what. For example, I had a friend of mine that I went to high school with, and her father, Mr. Cooper, funny enough, he was a mechanical engineer, and he was getting his master's actually at the time at Fairfield University, if I remember correctly. And just in talking with her and stuff, I connected with him, and so for me, it's always about trying to uncover knowledge wherever I can. There was no set path, there was no set group of folks. So I was always open. I was always trying to figure out, how do I get the information I need, right? So Mr. Cooper was very instrumental in guiding me, early on into, identifying, a path forward and schools to look at. Additionally, very grateful for EC Estz, and I like to call these folks out because it's important for me. Gratitude is really major for me. And these mentors have names, and I will forever be indebted to these folks. But EC Estz, actually, she took the time out to come to Central High School, where it was the biggest high school in Bridgeport. I was part of the magnet program. She came to talk about Tufts, and I'll never forget, I was the only person that stayed around after the meet and greet to talk to her, and that curiosity, she saw that and said, I'm going to invest in this kid, and shortly after that, I was on the campus, exploring the campus. I fell in love with it, and 20 some odd years later, I'm a jumbo, right? I'm still a jumbo. So class of 2002. So yeah,
you didn't play around, man. You're like, I'm getting my mechanical engineering degree. I mean, you went right into the science.
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I was good at design, and I liked, aerospace, but it wasn't clear to me. I think coming from Connecticut, where you have GE, you have these huge conglomerates, United Technologies, like I said, Raytheon in the Northeast as well. It's kind of in your background. Sikorsky, we had a plant in Bridgeport, believe it or not, right down in the South End, which the plant is still there, right? So I grew up with that. So I think subconsciously, it's kind of there. And these companies, when these companies have such a big presence, more likely than not, you're probably going to end up in their ecosystem one way or another. So, and that's what happened to me.
So you graduated from Tufts in 2002, and
yes.
Then 5 years later, you're like, I'm getting my master's in engineering at RPI.
Yeah. So RPI, another fantastic school. They had a tremendous partnership with United Technologies. And, I said, look, I know that, again, education, it was just, once you get hooked, you're really hooked, right? So, my family was always like, when are you going to stop going to school, right? So it was a dual program. It was a joint program not only a MS in engineering, focused on decision sciences, but it was also my Six Sigma Black Belt, which is a very quality centric program that is very ingrained within discrete manufacturing companies like aerospace and defense companies like Sikorsky Aircraft, et cetera. So I did that because I thought, hey, I want to really dive deep into this world of manufacturing, right? I thought that was going to be my bread and butter for life. And but soon after that, as you can see, soon after that, I was on to my MBA a couple of years later. So,
and why? How did you? Again, most people stop at a master, but you're like, hold on a second, I want to get my MBA as well.
Yeah.
So 3 years later, you are now pivoting into the Tuck Business School at Dartmouth.
Yeah, very fortunate. And I earned my spot there. I really did. I did not just what it took to get in at that time, but just the years to get to that point. So I like to say, I like to say that I earned my spot there. But to be honest with you, I always wanted my MBA. I thought that was kind of the crowning achievement for me, because I didn't want, I looked at all the kind of the professional degrees, right? Legal, MD, et cetera. And it just it didn't resonate with me. Even though my dad thought I should have been he used to call me Perry Mason. Probably thought I should go into legal, always defending myself. Anyway, with that being said, when you have two sisters, you kind of have to. I thought that the business degree, given my skill sets, given what I thought I wanted to do, being in leadership specifically, I thought that this would be the crowning achievement, and it would really catapult my career. So yeah, I started researching schools. I had a short list of about two, got into both, was very, excited about them. But Tuck really just kind of stood out for me, amongst the schools that I was looking at.
So what were those first impressions? What were those first, reaction as you walk and visit Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire?
It's overwhelming. I mean, think about it. It's an Ivy League school. So just, I wasn't supposed to be there, right? When you think about, people might listen to this and say, yeah, right, you went to Tufts, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to be a boy from Bridgeport that just doesn't belong. I wasn't supposed to make it out. I wasn't supposed to be at Tufts. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere outside of Bridgeport. So it's overwhelming. But I was at home. I felt like I was at home eventually. I do belong there. I am from the Northeast. New England is my home. So once you kind of get over those fears and that intimidation, you realize this is home for me. So yeah, I mean, it's just beyond New England, or I should say, it's just beyond Boston, just beyond Connecticut, right? It's not a far drive, but it's a different world, right? It's a completely different world. Pretty insulated, but it's a beautiful environment, and I was very fortunate to be able to participate in the program, right? 2 years full time, no salary, trying to figure it out. So.
And I'm curious. I mean, I know you probably those 2 years were very rich with many experiences.
Absolutely.
Any classes or professors or concepts that stood out for you?
Wow. I mean, I can, that in itself is a whole day podcast, right? It's so many rich experiences, so many amazing professors that are world renowned and stuff, and just amazing experiences. I would say that, in terms of professors, like, I hate accounting, absolutely hate accounting, but I loved my professor Stockton, as an example, right? That was the type of experiences you had, right? Very difficult, some difficult classes and stuff, but the professors just made it just amazing. Professor Chomsky was my decision sciences professor, right? He was just very, very complex topics, but he just made you want to stay in class and just learn. I absolutely great impressions. Professor Argenti, communications professor, a corporate responsibility professor. He was my first professor, that kicked off Fall A and Fall B. If you know, you know, right? Fall A and Fall B are well regarded as one of the most difficult periods for any B school program. Tuck being the oldest, by the way, business school program. Fall A, Fall B is just an intense gauntlet of courses. The courses in themselves are not, some of them are difficult, some of them are not. Like I said, accounting just wasn't my thing, but it's the pressure cooker and the back-to-back courses, exams. I'm talking about exam after exam. It just would never end. I still have nightmares of those periods, right? But yeah, these professors, these experiences, it's just, I can go on and on, right? And there's more to it, right? We traveled together. I was in Switzerland for a couple of months. I actually got a job offer at that point, which I kind of regret, you know, not taking, but yeah, my life has worked out. India, spent some time in India. So yeah, great experiences. Can't just pinpoint one.
So I know as an undergrad, I pulled at least a dozen of all-nighters. Do Tuckies pull all-nighters?
I mean, come on. Whether you're partying or studying, it's a constant influx of all-nighters. We party really hard, but we study really hard. There was just a lot of hours in those study rooms with your peers. A lot of wine and a lot of partying for sure.
So I'm curious.
Yeah.
You obviously have 3 alumni networks: Tough, RPI,
Yeah.
Tucky, right? Like, anything that stands out? Is there any differences? Or there anything that separates them or commonalities?
That's a great question. Well, by default, they're going to be different communities in terms of, you know, our focus. You know, business school, completely different, right? A lot of us are kind of launched careers into leadership. You know, there's folks within our classes that are CEOs already, et cetera. And, you know, so it's just a different, you know, kind of tapestry, I guess. Whereas Tufts undergrad, you know, for example, I still have a connection with a lot of great friends. I'm still involved. For example, very proud to say as a jumbo that you know, Tufts is at the forefront of criminal reform, criminal justice reform, as part of a group, a program called Tuck.It and Partakers. I'm actually a mentor to an incarcerated learner, someone who was getting his degree from Tufts behind what we call behind the wall, right, in prison. Fortunately enough, he's actually been released about a month ago, so very proud of that. You know, I continue to be a source of mentorship for him. So, you know, very proud. So, you know, Tuck, you know, and then again, RPI, completely different kind of tapestry there of alumni and experiences and stuff in what they offer. So, you know, it's all beneficial. I would say that, you know, the important thing is stay connected one way or another, whether it's with a handful or with a broader organization or organizations within the network, but stay connected because there's so much value, whether it's just, you know, in conversations or actual efforts like Tuck.It, for example.
So you were working on helicopters. You're a mechanical engineer.
Yeah.
When did you pivot it into sales? Was that after Tuck or like around that time frame?
So another moment of gratitude, right? My really close friend, who I still, you know, again, still close friend of mine, Abdullah Wright, who is CSO of PMI, Project Management Institute. He's a chief strategy officer and a very close friend of mine. At one point, and during the 2-year period at Tuck, you know, he looked at me, he said, "Hey, you should really consider sales." And I never thought about that. And, you know, business school in of itself is a very transformational experience, but it's those conversations. It's not the classes per se, right? You can learn decision sciences anywhere. You can learn about accounting anywhere, right? You know, it's that whole complete experience, soup to nuts, right? That immersion and those conversations that you probably wouldn't have had otherwise. And post Tuck, I went back to aerospace and defense general management, and I realized something was missing. I was excelling I was being recognized within the quality organization, as a future leader and doing a lot of great stuff. I was delivering engines to the military customer through DCMA and to the commercial customer through FAA. Really impressed, through Pratt and Whitney. That's who I was working with at the time. As if something was missing, and I went back to that discussion. And 2 years after Tuck, I lopped off about a third of my salary, moved to North Carolina, and took my first sales role. Didn't know what I was doing, but 10 years later, I'm still figuring it out and have been better off for it.
Yeah, I always share with folks that it's been my experience that in this country, there are 3 ways to create wealth within a span of 10 years. One, somebody in your family dies and you inherit a nice chunk of money, and then boom, things turn overnight, right? That's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
That wasn't my option. Real estate, right? You buy something, flip it, 2 years later, do that again. Within 10 years, you're creating wealth. And sales. I think the profession of sales, and I do emphasize the profession, right? Because there's a lot of sales people out there, but sales professional are few and far in between. So I'll be very curious to your answer in this. Like, if you had to do a 20-minute TED Talk, would it be mechanical engineering? Would it be in sales, or would it be a completely different topic?
Yeah.
What would that topic be?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can find much better and much more proficient engineers to talk about helicopters and engineering. That's not me. I loved it. I did it for 10 years, 10 plus years, but that's not me. I think, for me, I think if I had a TED Talk, it would probably be about, understanding your value proposition to this world, and how do you monetize that, right? So it's not just this, kind of earthy, crunchy, hey, what's my purpose in life? No, it's at the end of the day, it's about money, right? I'm a business school student, right? So, or was, right? So a business leader, right? So, but there's many paths to being a provider and making money, et cetera. So the question is, well, what's the right, how do you uncover your true value proposition, your true differentiation? Because don't tell me that it's making great PowerPoint presentations, because you'll be replaced by AI. Don't tell me it's assessing the markets, because again, there's plenty of tools that do that better, right? I think we're all trying to figure out the why. So for me, being able to look inside, being able to really have a serious introspective look at, what's my real value and how can I differentiate myself, so that I can monetize that, right, and be successful. I think that would be where I would focus kind of my lessons learned in life in a TED Talk, if that ever came to be.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiment. There's a tendency in our community to gravitate, or to pull away from addressing the desire of like making money and being creating financial stability.
Yeah.
Right. Because I do agree, like, financial success might not bring you happiness, but it certainly brings you stability.
Yeah.
Right. And then from stability, then I could launch into pursuing things like happiness. Right.
Yeah.
So I'd be very curious, how are you thinking about success, and how has that evolved in your life? Right. The word éxito, right? Especially you being a first generation college student.
Yeah, look, I think I got a couple more lifetimes to live, so I'm still early on in this, right? This is probably my third act. I probably got a couple more acts to go. When I discovered sales and got off the kind of the traditional rat race, and I got into sales, which is a completely different, just mind shift, profession, you name it. I started to get a taste of that, the commissions, right? And realizing, my gosh, like, why are business school students not looking at this field, this profession? You're leveraging so much of what you learn, which is within school, and sales gets a bad rap. You think about the car salesman, And that is not what sales is, right? Salesmen are consultants. Salesmen are, we execute, right? We bring value. We bring value. We realize value, with our customers, right? Especially if you're selling technology. In my case, I sell ERP technology for SAP. Anyway, to get back to your question of, how does, success, what does that look like? For me, at that point, it was money, and I was making a good amount of money. My last role was very transformational for me because I realized that, yes, I want to make money, but it's got to be in the right framework. It's got to be the right context. I actually left my last role purposely, and I took about a 1.5 year sabbatical because, their values weren't aligned with mine, and it was a very toxic environment for me, and for many actually that left. But all that to say that I realized that, yeah, money's still the goal. I still want to be a great provider. I still am that, but it's got to be in the context of 3 very important pillars: freedom, balance, and peace. Peace, right? That's where the shift in mentality came, right? If I don't have those 3 things that I'm in constant search for, then the money could be there, but it's just not going to be a fulfilling situation. So that's what they don't teach you at business school or just in school in general is, they teach you how to be an engineer, how to go into business, but the whys, these important age-old questions, right? That philosophers have been wrestling with, for thousands and thousands of years. They don't teach you that, right? And that's how things have pivoted for me in the recent years.
Well, I feel like your journey has been exemplary, and you certainly have accomplished a lot of impactful. I feel like in your answer, that's what I hear. It's impact, right? Like, yes, the money has its box, but like I'm seeking impact, meaningful impact. And I'm curious now that the past is 2020, reflecting on your journey. Is there anything that you would do differently, or better put, is there anything that you would do to optimize if you were talking to the younger version of yourself, or to an incoming freshman into college, somebody considering a master's? What would you say? Hey, I would optimize my journey this way.
Yeah. Wow. If we had a time machine, right? We all wish that, right? The first person to figure that one out, man. When I look, even in my recent experience at Tuck, right, 10, 12 years ago, this would apply then as well. But if I had a chance to go back, or even as I talk to many folks that I try to mentor, whether formally or informally, one thing that I really am big on is education. Very important, right? Continue, definitely pursue education. It's a great tool. It's a means to an end, but there's much more that you experience in life that demands more than just kind of book knowledge. And that's, how do you approach, these experiences and beyond? How do you approach life, through and post these academic experiences? And let me be more clear. For me, the advice would be, look beyond the traditional paths and the traditional knowledge that's laid out before you, right? Take risks, take a lot of risks, take them often, calculated for sure, but don't be so cautious about, let's say, the traditional way of doing things, especially when you come from a background like mine, where it's like, well, I want to do the right thing. I want to do the traditional thing. I want to be able to make, money the right way, right? Your 9 to 5, this, that, the other. There's so many ways to be successful, school or otherwise, but, there's just so many. So I think, if you're going to go the college route and everything, that's great. I'm all for that. I'm a big proponent of that, but, look for wisdom from uncommon places, look for mentorship from uncommon places, and be open to, be open to take that job in a different country, be open to, move across the country, be open to things like that you probably wouldn't be so comfortable doing traditionally, So I think that would be my real advice is to have taken more risks, more calculated risks probably. And I'm still doing that. So
Yeah.
that's why I got into sales.
Yeah. I mean, your answer reminds me, I don't know if it was Ernest Hemingway or Mark Twain who said this. I never allowed my academics to interfere with my education.
Yeah.
All right. And I've always felt like that encapsulated the spirit, academics were always important, right? Like I want to make sure I got that grade.
Very important.
But I also made a huge emphasis on the experiences and the wisdom and education that I got through the ages.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What as we wrap up this podcast,
mm-hmm.
Can you think of any final words of wisdom? Any other golden nuggets of wisdom you might want to share with the audience?
Golden nuggets. I would like to think I'm still too young to be sharing golden nuggets, but I think it goes back to that the kind of the last question and also the TED Talk discussion, which is, life is not linear. You're going to expect, my last year was probably the most difficult year, most challenging year, of my life, for many reasons. Right. And, for me, being able to have the grit to go through it, to still lead a family, to still provide for them throughout, that process, is not something that I learned, like you said, education versus academics is not something that I learned in school, even though what the muscles that I exercised throughout my, 45 years have all, made me successful, at Tufts, at Dartmouth, et cetera, being gritty, being very gritty, and being able to just stick with it, but then, kind of thrive through it. Right. Not only sticking with it, but thriving. The first part of my sales career was very difficult. Very difficult. Not because of sales in itself. It was just, the function itself is not difficult. It's just the environment. It was the wrong place at the wrong time, but I stuck with it. So that stick-to-itiveness, that grittiness, is, when applied to academics, when applied to life, when applied to all areas of your life, that's what's really going to help you succeed, and attain, whatever it is that you've laid out for yourself. Grit. It might sound cheesy, it might sound corny, but I credit my success to that stick-to-itiveness, to that grit, and again, learning my why, peace, balance, and freedom, right? Developing that why, so that's kind of my golden thread.
I like that. Yeah. Grit, commitment, moxie.
Moxie, yeah. So many words for it, Yeah.
But I tied it all up to virtue, right? I always see virtue, the various virtues, right, from ancient time to modern times.
Oh, yeah.
Right, as like key first principles, right? I see them as first principle for whatever choices you make, career, personal, in your life, as good compass, right, for anything that you do. Ivan, thank you so much for sharing your story, spending some time with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all of you who join us online for being part of this podcast around the Girdle Earth. If today's conversation sparked a memory or gave you something to think about, leave us a thoughtful, introspective reflection in the comment section. And please share this episode with a classmate, with a fellow alum. That's a very simple way to keep the Dharma spirit alive in this very noisy digital age. So until next time, stay curious, stay green, and keep roaming this beautiful Girdle Earth we call home. Thank you, everybody.